Hello and welcome. This is Cheryl. Thank you so much for stopping by. Last week I shared a peel off and glitter technique to create this card, and I mentioned in that video that you could also use dies to create a similar look. For those that didn't see that video and aren't aware, these are what peel off stickers are, and they don't really make them now. As far as I'm aware, there's not a new company that has taken over them. They discontinued them several years ago. But if anyone is like me, you've got a large selection of them just sitting in a container or a drawer or whatever, and I'm trying to use some of them up. So this is the die I'm going to use in this video, and this technique works best with dies that have an outline to them. And if you can see this kimono die, it's got an outline to it. We're going to make the outline black to emulate the peel off stickers. Now, the best way to do this is to use black glossy cardstock, but that's not available for anyone or for everyone. So I'm going to show you how to make some black glossy cardstock. So I've got some glossy alcohol ink cardstock here, and I'm just using black alcohol ink and isopropyl alcohol with an alcohol blower tool to blow and basically just cover this whole piece of glossy cardstock to make it black. You could also use a black Sharpie and just color the cardstock. You will get a little bit of a streaky look when you use a Sharpie, but that is another option if you don't happen to have alcohol inks. Photo paper would probably work for this as well. I don't have any to try it on, and I didn't really want to buy something that I didn't really need in order to just try it. Once you've got your background done, just set it aside to dry. We will use it later. So I'm taking some plain white cardstock and putting some Sookwang tape on it. I've got a 5-inch roll here, so it almost covers the whole piece of this 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch cardstock, but I will cut it down in a minute. I'm taking the side of my bone folder to make sure that adhesive is really good contact with the cardstock before I cut it down. And I cut it down to 3.5 by 4 3/4. I want to have some nice mats around it. I want to make sure that it's plenty big for the die that I'm going to use, but I want to cut it down before I do my technique on it so I have the finished size and I can center my die in that piece there. So I'm going to take my dies off my package. I actually haven't used this die yet, and I ended up tearing up my package while I was taking it off. So the image pieces of this die actually come out so you can use it with or without them. I want to use it with them, but in order to keep everything in place, I'm just taking some die tape and I'm just taping all those pieces together so that I can put it onto my piece of cardstock that has the Sookwang on it. Now, because this is tape backing here, you can't tape on it, but I have my die tape bigger than the actual cardstock piece, so I can wrap it around and die cut there. I'm running it through the die cut machine with the die blade facing up, and then I'm going to take my die off. Now, the tape stuck really, really well to the cardstock, so I had to rip it a little bit to get it off. Now, before you take your die off, you want to tape the back of this paper. Sometimes, even though we're going through the tape backing plus the tape plus the cardstock, sometimes that die will actually go through the whole thing, and we don't want to have any pieces accidentally falling out. So I like to tape the back, and I've gone a little bit too extreme with this. You don't need this much tape. Basically, I just wanted to make sure that everything was going to stay in place. And now I can take my die tape off and take my die off of that tape backing. Now, while you're taking the die off of the tape backing, some of those pieces have flowers and stars in them, and you'll see right here, a couple pieces of backing come off with it. When I'm doing the glitter technique, I'm working from darkest color to lightest. And the colors that I'm going to do first is the burgundy, and I'm going to do it for the flowers and for those stars. So I don't need to put those tape backing pieces back in because that's the first color I'm going to do. If a backing piece comes off from a part of your die that you want to be a lighter color, just put that backing back in and cover that tape back up. I'm just putting the burgundy color on, and you saw me take a soft brush to get some of the excess glitter off of that tape backing. And then I'm taking an extra piece of tape backing and I'm using that to burnish the glitter, give it really good contact with the adhesive, and it kind of flattens it out and it makes it sparkle. So I always keep my spare backing pieces. If by chance you don't have any, you could use a piece of parchment paper. That would work as well. So my next color that I'm going to do is like a platinum gold. So I'm taking all the pieces off that I want to be that color. Now, when you take these pieces off, you want to use a pair of tweezers that squeeze shut. You don't want the type of tweezers that you squeeze to open up. You want to be able to hold them shut so that you can really control and hold those tape backings when you're taking them off. After you put the gold glitter on, you're going to use that same soft brush, brush the excess off, and then burnish that glitter in place. I like to use a Swiffer cloth to get any excess parts that are sticking to the tape backing. Sometimes there's a little bit of static there and the glitter really likes to stick to it. So using a soft brush and then going back with a Swiffer cloth after that really helps to get those excess pieces off. And we're trying to get those excess pieces off so that we don't contaminate different glitter colors. The next color that I'm going to be using is clear opalescent glitter. That's going to look white because my cardstock is white, but it's really, really easy to contaminate it with different glitter colors. So I try really hard to get as much of the excess off so that I don't have any contamination. You'll also notice with this that I'm working right over the container. I pour the glitter on, lightly tap the excess off, and then I close my container up, put it to the side, and I'll do my burnishing and stuff on my scrap piece of paper. But any glitter that comes off of there, I won't put it back in the container because it's likely going to have a couple pieces of the burgundy and the gold as well in there. And once again, I don't want to contaminate it, so I want to make sure to toss any glitter that comes off of that part there. We work from darkest to lightest because if you get a couple pieces of light glitter on a dark glitter surface, you don't actually see it. But if you go from light to dark, you would definitely see any light or any dark specks in the light glitter. So my glitter piece is done, and now I'm going to use my die, and I'm only using the outline part of it, and I'm die cutting our alcohol ink glossy cardstock. These pieces that I'm poking out here, I'm going to tuck them to the side. I'll do a different technique with them next week in a video and share how to reuse them. But I'm going to save them because I really like the texture that that alcohol ink looks on the background, and I think it would make another really beautiful kimono image. So I'm carefully taking that black outline out of my die, putting it to the side. I'm going to use a piece of wax paper here. You can use also a piece of parchment. I chose to use the wax paper because the parchment that I have in the house is like a craft color, a light brown color, and I wanted to make sure that I could see my image really, really clearly so that I could place my outline perfectly on the image there. You saw me take the backing off of the outline, and with the wax paper in between my glitter piece and my black outline, I'm just lining everything up, and then I will slide out that wax paper. Now the wax paper will stick to the exposed adhesive on the kimono image, but you will be able to easily lift it off. It's not going to stick so much that you have to tear it. That's why we use the wax paper, because it has a little bit of a release to it. But by putting that in between the image and the outline, I can make sure to get a perfectly lined up image before putting the whole piece down. And then I'm just going to use that same wax paper piece, and I'm going to just press that outline into the open adhesive and get it stuck really, really well. Now that that image is ready to go, I am ready to put my card together. So I've got a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card base. I am putting a matte on there, and then I'm putting a second matte, which is a burgundy color. I'll have the sizes of all these mattes and all the cardstock pieces in the description down below, as well as all the supplies that I'm using here as well. I like to put an acrylic block on my piece while it's drying so I can continue working on other stuff here. I'm taking the adhesive backing off of those pieces that I put on the kimono image piece to keep everything in place. And after I do that, I'm also going to take some of my Distress Collage medium and go around the outside edges of this piece. That way I have adhesive on all of those edges as well as the center part. Now, when I put this down, I'm going to be very careful to put it down as straight as possible before I press it down. If that tape sticks to anything before I've actually placed it, it's really, really good tape and it's not going to be easy to lift up. So I'm just very careful when I put it down in the first place. The last step, I want to make the flowers glossy. I want to give them a little bit of a different texture to them. So I'm using some Glossy Accents that I've put in a fine tip needle nose bottle. and I'm going over all of those areas. Now, if by chance you happen to have a little air bubble or something that comes out with the glossy accents, just take a thumbtack or a die pick and just poke it out. They're usually quite easy to release while it is wet. If you don't notice it until it's dry, it's there for good. You can't take it out after it's all dry. So I'm carefully just putting the glossy accents on just the flowers. I'm not doing the vines or the stars. I didn't want to go overboard with the glossy accents, and sometimes really tiny areas, it starts to lose its precision. So I wanted to avoid that area and just do just the flowers. It's enough to give it enough different texture. Once I have the glossy accents all over there, I'm going to let it dry completely. After I am finished using the glossy accents, I want to tap that bottle on my work surface a couple times and then squeeze it a little bit just to make sure there's no glossy accents in that metal fine tip there. If there happens to be any in there, it's going to dry up and clog your bottle. So you want to make sure to do this each and every time. Now that it's dry, this is the finished project and I love how it looks. I love that kimono die. And there is the original plus the kimono. Now, obviously the lines on the die are a little bit thicker than an actual peel-off sticker, but the look is very, very similar. And it's a great way to use up your supplies, use up some of your glitter. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a fabulous day.